Alright, last episode we covered about sole proprietor versus private limited in our Solo Biz episode, and we had some discussions in Shift, which is our flagship course, and we were trying to work out the fundamentals, the calculation before you incorporate. But I guess the main problem after incorporation is what's next, right? What is the main issue that drives business owners crazy because they thought incorporation is the end, really, but it's definitely not. So today, myself, Chris, founder of Solo Biz, and my co-founder, JJ Ong, is here to walk you through what you have to do after incorporation.
Absolutely. So a lot of solopreneurs think that, oh, once I incorporate, right, then that's it, I have a business. But there's so much more to that. So you think that you've registered a company and you've made it. But honestly, right, the incorporation is really just admin, right? So then what is the next step when it comes to the real business after that?
Yeah, and in fact, because I actually helped JJ in one of his projects or his company after his first financial year, and realized that, despite him having many years of experience as an entrepreneur, maybe there are some gaps that people miss.
Correct.
And in fact, in professional compliance and accounting, that is where we need to look at other stuff like tax planning, compliance, cash flow management, and maybe you are also a founder as well. You are also struggling in the same phase, and this is why we are here to discuss this topic, what you should do after incorporation.
So based on your experience, right, Chris, what do you think is the thing that most founders don't consider right after incorporation?
Okay, so there are a few things, right? Number one is accounting and bookkeeping, because that's the fundamental of any business. If you are a business owner and you don't even know your numbers, you don't even track all your records, your receipts and all this, you're going to have a headache when it comes to filing, bookkeeping and, reporting to IRAs and ACRA. And the number two thing is mixing personal and business expenses, because it can get very gray. How do you actually define what is for business and what is for personal? That's the fundamental, right? Number three is not tracking your cash flow monthly, because we are not employees anymore. We don't draw monthly salaries. So we really need to make sure that whatever that we receive this month is enough to pay for our expenses and our payroll, whether we have employees or not, and our suppliers next month. Okay. And the final thing is that you only think about tax at year end, because that is very dangerous. Okay. A lot of founders, business owners, they make a lot of money, but they don't really keep the money. They see the money come in, feel very shocked. But at the end of the month, they spend it already. They never even provide for something called tax. Okay, until after the tax comes, after the NOA is finalized, why I suddenly have to pay 5 figures of tax bill? Then I never properly allocate this money. Then where do I get the money from? That's where people start to panic. So, very different from self-employed and sole proprietors is for business owners, right? You really have to allocate all this money and cash flow for your business, because once your entity exists, you have statutory obligations. It's not like you just play, then everyone you should receive salary like an employee, because that's not how it works for businesses.
I think a lot of businesses, they really focus on the actual business, their product or their service. But they actually miss out this very important part, which can maybe cause some people to unknowingly have broken the law, right? The business, right, when it comes to registering a business and running a private limited company, there's quite a few compliance considerations. What are some of these common compliance considerations that founders should really know?
Okay, so there are a few. I will just list the 4 fundamental ones that everyone would need to take care of. Number one, there's the annual return filing with ACRA. This is the every year. Okay, you will need to fill up this form with ACRA. It's not IRAS, it's ACRA. Okay, usually people will work with their corporate secretary to file the annual return, or they could do it for you as a service, as part of the package. Okay, that's one. Number two is corporate tax filing with IRAS. That's where you report your income, your chargeable income and all that. That's how IRAS can tax you as a business. This is different from ACRA filing. IRAS is different from ACRA, again, to be very clear. Number three is your GST registration if your revenue exceeds a certain threshold. Usually we talk about the 1M revenue, but of course there are exceptions to that. And finally, there's your payroll and CPF if you're hiring. Okay, so CPF, this thing is more like if you are employed as an employee, you have a mandatory employment contract, and that's why you have to file your employees' income as well. This is called the auto inclusion scheme. Okay, this one we talk more in detail in our course lah. But if you want to look at the fundamentals, it's basically this 4: ACRA returns filing, number 2 is corporate tax filing, and then GST registration, and finally your CPF and payroll.
I think one of the very common mistakes for new business owners, right, speaking from my own experience in the beginning, is that a lot of people confuse annual return filing and tax filing, which are reporting structures that is being reported to two different entities that govern two different things, right? Yeah, so how do these people really get to know what is what? Is there like a step-by-step instruction on ACRA or IRAS that they can find, or
Okay, so what IRAS does is that when you voluntarily register yourself, they have this timeline to send you reminder emails on what you need to do. So like every few months or half a year, I will receive this notification email from IRAS, hey, you need to do this, or you need to file your annual returns. So they are quite prompt on this because they are so scared you forget. So it's very clear cut. They just want to help you ease off all these reporting issues, because as business owners, I know that we are very focused on the business growing revenue and stuff, but all these nitty-gritty and compliance are what we usually forget as we get busier. So it's a good reminder. The other good reminder is that you can join us, then we can share with you the reminders and all that, because one thing about business owners is that it can get quite lonely But then we got no one to talk to. That's why we need the community to encourage each other to start.
It's true. Yeah, for me personally, I think that for me as well as a business owner running multiple businesses, we tend to focus on the day-to-day a lot. And these kind of things, right, is actually in my opinion quite good to get a partner company or engage someone to handle these things for you, or at least remind you to get these things done, so that you don't really miss out the administration while your company is growing. Yeah, so I think a lot of people, when they start businesses, they focus on trying to get their company to turn a profit, right? I mean, naturally so, because you start business is to make money,
Nobody start business to lose money.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, but then for most of us who want to kind of use our business to help people to grow a community, we want to turn a profit so that we can grow together with our team and everything. But I think the issue comes when you work so hard on your own business and then you realize that, hey, shit, I'm profitable. And then you start to realize that there's all these taxes you have to pay, there's all these books and all these files that you never keep properly. And when there is a messy bookkeeping and delayed filing, right, it can cause a lot of pain. Speaking from personal experience, when before I started to do it properly, thanks to advice by my corporate secretary as well as Chris, right, many years ago, I realized that when the filing term comes, right, you have to dig up all these receipts, you have to dig up all these like documents that you never filed properly. So if there's a proper system which Chris and I have developed for Solo Biz, and you are following this system, it is like a day-to-day thing. It becomes like breathing air. Right? At the end of the year, financial year, you just click a couple of buttons and you're done.
Okay, maybe I share a bit of my professional experience last time. So I was a corporate accountant. And then last time we were very scared of audit. You know why? Because things are quite messy one. If you don't maintain day-to-day, your reconciliation, your book receipts and all this, then come audit time, then you panic. And then you get questioned by auditor. This is not something that we want as a business owner, because you waste time. You think about it. Your business focus on growth and maximizing revenue, then suddenly you have to take care of all these compliance issues is very troublesome. That's why after I started my own business, I make sure that my own accounting and bookkeeping is always properly checked. And I know that for many people, even though they may have done their own bookkeeping, but it may not be the standard that the government wants, Then because year end, then you come and scramble, then that's the time that most people look for us, especially this kind of period where IRAS is coming.
Correct. Yeah.
So very important that we don't want to leave all these compliance things to the last minute. Otherwise, it's very messy for everyone.
True. And you got to do doesn't mean you are doing it correctly. And that's what I realized. A lot of founders, they think they are doing bookkeeping, but there's actually a lot of things missing. So when you do your annual return filing, right, when you report your taxes, right, there's a lot of things that IRAS never come and catch you. Doesn't mean you're doing it correct. That's what I realized.
And now we have AI, right? We all know that AI can help us do accounting and bookkeeping, all this. But I can tell you honestly, you use AI, right, they will hallucinate. And you don't want your books to hallucinate, because it will get very messy. I know that we all say like AI will take over accountants. I've been hearing this since I was in university already. And even until now, AI still don't have the 100% replication of a professional accountant and financial analyst to help you see where are the real missing parts. Of course, they can aid and support you, but if you want to 100% depend on them, I think you have to be quite careful to make sure that what they are saying or what they are writing is 100% correct lah. Otherwise, you kena audit from ACRA.
Yeah, so I think that's why I think one of the important discussion points is that founders, business owners, they need to start building their accounting and bookkeeping structure early. Right? What are these considerations when they're building this accounting structure and bookkeeping structure?
Okay, so number one is discipline. Okay, so I know that you're all focused on business because even for myself, right, I was in the early stage, I was very focused on business because like no revenue come in, then what numbers you talking about?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
but after you reach the stable stage, right, then you at least need to do some weekly reconciliation. Like you have every few days or every few weeks, you have income coming in from your clients and cash flow, and then you are paying out to your supplier or you're buying stuff, right? You really need to record this, ideally in an accounting bookkeeping system, okay, a software. Okay, some of you record through Excel, which is also acceptable, but Excel also has mistakes. If your formula is wrong, because it's usually the human error, not the software error. So it depends on how confident you are on your own skills versus the accounting software. So I personally use an accounting software because I've used it before, and I know that how it works and how to read, and they will generate for me the financial statements. So some of you prefer to use Excel to save costs. Nothing wrong with it, but just make sure that you're very confident in your numbers. The number two thing is not just on your bookkeeping, but on your financial health, because we always talk about personal finance, right? In personal finance, we will manage our budget, our income, our cash flow. But for businesses, maybe you are not so well versed in managing the money from the business, because business is all about profitability already. Maybe you have employees, you need to pay their next month's salary, and then you never even budget for it. Then you have multiple founders and multiple partners then how to manage the money and split the money.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on things like declaring dividends and all of this. Even if the fundamentals is not there, right, then you cannot really use all these structures to your advantage.
And in fact, tax planning is another aspect, because some founders and business owners, they need to think of how to split the money in terms of dividends, in terms of director fees, in terms of salary. Especially if you have multiple partners, you don't split the money correctly, right? Then I don't know what you may lead to a founder breakup or something like that. So tax planning is also part of all this financial strategy to manage a business. And finally, we talk about knowing when to register for GST. Okay, GST is something we'll go into deeper detail when you hit the threshold, which is 1M revenue, or if you're in a specialized business. Okay, but for solo business, usually we don't hit the GST mark very fast. We just focus on be profitable first, and then we get at least a CIT rebate. That is the two things that we focus on first.
Yeah, correct. So essentially, right, this whole like accounting and bookkeeping structure is actually part of the business growth, because it helps us understand our cash flow better, it helps us understand our funds better, and most importantly, it helps us have enough money to pay tax at the end of the financial year and even declare dividends.
Yeah, correct. Because money is very sensitive to personal, but to business, it's just another kind of transaction. Which is why if you really want to make sure your bookkeeping, your compliance, all these are steady, to give you a real peace of mind, then I would really recommend a professional service provider. And that's where I want to bring you to Osome, because after incorporating, I quickly realized that staying compliant every month was the real struggle. Filing deadlines, corporate secretary matters, accounting. And this is why having the right accounting partner matters, especially one that handles incorporation and ongoing compliance together. And yes, this episode is sponsored by Osome, and what we like about them is that they don't just help you incorporate. They handle ongoing bookkeeping, tax filing, payroll, and compliance, all managed through their app. And this is where Osome helps founders both with company incorporation and ongoing business needs like accounting, bookkeeping, GST, payroll, and more. Everything is managed through the Osome app, so you can see your financials in one place and keep control of your business without drowning in admin. Whether you are just registering your company or you want a partner that handles the heavy lifting every month, Osome is built for solopreneurs and small teams who want clarity and confidence in their numbers. At Solo Biz and Honey Money, I have incorporated these two companies through Osome and currently engage them as my corporate secretary to manage all the compliance and admin stuff. So I really recommend their services as an existing user. And the good news is you can use my exclusive link here to get 16% off any Osome service packages. For example, after discounts, you can get a full incorporation and secretary package at just 504 Singapore dollars, which is super affordable. So check the link in the description to get started with Osome today.
Yeah, so I think another thing that's very exciting is that, last year when I was filing my corporate tax and everything, I realized, hey, I'm having a huge tax break, a tax discount, right? Because of something was announced in the previous budget. And this year, in the budget 2026, something was also announced about the corporate income tax rebate. Chris, you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Okay, so corporate income tax rebate, right? Is just a very simple term that government is giving you tax benefit, right? So to break it down, the number is 40%. So essentially means that if you were supposed to pay like $10,000 in taxes, government is giving you 40% rebate, you only pay $6,000 in the end. But that's just a simplicity. Today we'll go through in detail what this really means, because even I myself have a bit of confusion, and I believe that many of you may have this kind of confusion as well. So to break it down, right, the corporate income tax rebate is different from something called the corporate income tax rebate grant, okay, cash grant. Okay, so these are two separate things.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I go through in simple terms what are these two first. Okay, so to give a very simple example, let's say you have a chargeable income tax $10,000. So to give a CIT rebate, we call it corporate income tax rebate as CIT rebate lah. Okay, so $4,000 discount, you will only pay $6,000. Okay, so that's just a very simple number. But what if you make a loss? Okay, what if you are in an unprofitable position, which is very common for new startup companies? Then you will receive at least 1.5K. Okay, this is the minimum, and that's called the CIT rebate cash grant. But this CIT rebate cash grant also have requirements on. Okay, not just say you just set up a one-person company, then you don't make any money, then you every year receive 1.5K, like that everyone going to set up.
Yeah, sure, man. Let's do it.
Right. It's just free money. You don't even need profit. You get 1.5K every year. Okay, so the requirement for CIT rebate cash grant is that you need at least one local employee with CPF contributions. Okay, and not just yourself. If you hire yourself, Solo Biz, right? Like we will say you hire yourself, and then you pay yourself CPF and all that, you also won't qualify. You know why? You know why? Because you need to hire someone else other than the shareholder and director. Then you can receive the cash grant. Yeah. Okay. So to be clear, cash grant is quite different from rebate. Rebate doesn't require you to have a separate local employee. As long as you have taxable income, you'll qualify for the rebate.
Right. So rebate is essentially if you're making a profit, you get a little bit of a tax discount on your taxable income, right? And then for the cash rebate is that if you are not making any money, you get a little bit of money from the government lah.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially the CIT rebate cash, right, is not really a good thing. That means your company not doing well, ma. Right. So we shouldn't really focus on that lah.
Correct.
Right.
And it's like a consolation prize. Like in Toto, you don't win the top few prize, you get a consolation prize. It's just that to encourage people, hey, don't be so scared to start business. But even if you're in a loss position, the government is still trying to help you. And in fact, if you minus away all the admin costs, this 1.5K may be even higher than your ongoing compliance costs. So it's really to encourage businesses to start and not be afraid that you will keep losing money. But of course, this should not be your end goal lah. Not always depend on government payout. So if you look at the corporate income tax rebate, right, there's a cap. So the cap is $30,000. So this $30,000 of CIT rebate, 40%, right? So if you do the math, it will become $75,000 original tax. So if you're able to pay 75,000 original tax, that means you're quite good.
Well lah, yeah.
Very good already. Yeah. Like as a small business, you can make 75K of income tax. And you look at this 30K of tax, is a lot of savings. So minimally, we should not even look at the 1.5K unless we are in the very poor or bad position.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, Singapore government is really trying to encourage all our business to, flourish in this very competitive environment. And it's very business friendly, which is why this is the cue that you should start your own business if you are within the zone of our target audience. You are a one-person business, and then you think that your revenue is getting too high for self-employed income. And then you look at all the tax benefit that you don't enjoy, because you're a sole proprietor or you're self-employed. Then you're thinking of incorporation. Then that's where you should start to look at incorporating.
Yeah, okay. I mean, sharing a personal story, I've been doing businesses for a long time, and it actually took me quite a few years, right, to get into the zone of understanding how to incorporate properly. Because I think in the beginning, there's a lot of misconceptions that, you do solo business, right? You just sole proprietor, it's easier, there's less administration to do. But then you realize that as your company starts to make a little bit of money, you're missing out a lot of all these tax grants and all these things that you are actually automatically qualified for if you are a registered company, a private limited company, just like the startup tax exemption scheme. That is actually the CIT rebate is on top of this one.
Yeah.
So you get multiple layers of all these benefits, right?
Yeah, correct. So we haven't even talked about startup tax exemption and partial tax exemption scheme, but that one we go more in detail. I think in one of our previous video plus our shift free preview video you can go and take a look. That one will go into deeper details because today we just want to focus on after incorporation
So at Solo Biz, which is co-founded by Chris and I, we have developed a structure because of all the years of me doing different businesses. So I brought all the pain points to the table, and Chris and I developed all these structures to solve this. So at the fundamental, we have Shift, which is a foundational online course which you can start anytime, any day. And all these videos are structured and done by Chris and myself, and it will help you get a very strong fundamental idea of how to go about doing this entire accounting, bookkeeping, corporate structure thing if you are a solopreneur.
Yeah, and in fact, we even have a free preview. So not necessarily you have to pay one. Like you watch a free preview, you know what to do already, then good for you. We also want more people to know what to do. But if you really want a deeper level, that's where the other paid version comes in. It's like we have a freemium model. So Shift has a free preview, and then if you're interested to know further, we have the paid version, then you can join us and try to learn something before you incorporate your business.
And if you're like me, you don't really want to sit through 5 videos and read through all these things. You just want somebody to tell you customized solution based on your situation. We have Spark, which is essentially a level up to Shift, where you get to consult Chris and anybody on our team who has the expertise to help you with the situation that you're in to gain personalized clarity.
Yeah, and in fact, Smart will actually apply to a lot more business owners because they have already incorporated. Yeah, so we are looking at all these leads and prospects who have already incorporated, but they maybe don't have like a real financial sense health check to their business. Like they don't know how to pay themselves or what is the best way to pay their employees. And maybe they are also looking at other services to clean up their balance sheet, clean up their finances, and make sure that what they're doing is correct. Because we may still be stuck in the bubble that we thought everything we done is correct until certain crises or problems hit us. So that's why Spark is also very important because it's like one-to-one guidance. Like we are like the solution to the problem. So you give us your problem, then we will go and see how we can tackle this problem. And then everyone together as a team, we help you figure out the solution that's best suited for your business. So that's how Spark is working a consultancy service.
Yeah, so personally, right, even though I'm a co-founder of Solo Biz, I am also a customer. I'm also a customer of Spark for Solo Biz because I run other businesses as well, and I need some of the team's expertise and Chris' expertise on how to efficiently do my filing. It's like I can do myself, but it takes me like days, right, to compile all these documents. Whereas if I just pay someone, he tell me exactly what to do. I can skip all these, maybe some of these unnecessary steps, right, that we don't even know is unnecessary. So I think that is very good because we want to focus on what brings us revenue as business owners. All these administrative things that is structured, that can be structured, should be structured, and it should flow like water and not be like a roadblock to our success.
Yeah, and in fact, Spark, we have a few different levels of packages as well, just to share. Like if you just want very basic tailored advice, right, we have the base level, which is just like a one-time consultation. But if you want it like a retainer fee, you want to ask us unlimited questions throughout a certain period, we also have that too. So it's really tailored to different type of target audience.
So if you are a business owner that has incorporated for a while, but you're not too sure if you're doing this right, you're not too sure you're doing your bookkeeping right, or if you are somebody that is looking to register a company, you're not too sure how to go about this, then the first step is to check out the Shift free preview, and then if you think that's helpful, you can move on to the Shift course.
Yeah, or just directly book us through Spark. Yeah, then we'll help you through the way.
So, when it comes to a corporate entity, I think a lot of people are very scared, like, oh, I need to hire a corporate secretary and then to do this thing called AGM. Is there I need to gather all the directors, gather all the staff? What if I'm the only director? How do I do AGM with myself?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is AGM?
Okay, when people don't understand this AGM, the impression of my AGM before I start my business, I thought, okay, because you know listed companies, right? They have whole AGM, and then all these people will come to annual general makan, or the buffet. You thought you need to do something like that? No lah, it won't happen. Okay, as a solo business company, there are some exemptions. Okay, because you are an exempt private company, and there are exemptions where you probably won't even need to hold one. Okay, and this thing your corporate secretary will advise you because it's part of their corporate secretary package. If you need an AGM, they will do a virtual one for you if it's necessary. But if it's not necessary, they will just write off as an exemption. So don't worry too much as a solo business owner. But if you are really into some skill, you will need to hold AGM. This one you probably can consult the corporate secretary lah. They will advise you further. But don't worry too much about AGM. AGM is just like a compliance requirement.
Okay, so when it comes to filing corporate taxes, right, there are a couple of difference between Form C, Form CS, and also Form CS Lite. Wow, so many different ones. How do I know which one to file?
Okay, so as a basic, right, CS Lite is if you're making less than 200k annual income. Your revenue is less than 200k, then you'll file the Form CS Lite. Then Form CS is for between your 200k to $5 million of revenue, you'll file Form CS. Then Form C is anything above that, like 5 million. So as solo business owners, we try to aim for Form CS at least. Okay, but if you are within Form CS Lite, then nothing to be discouraged of. It's just a pace of life. These are just some admin forms, nothing too difficult to fill up. It's just asking for your revenue, your chargeable income, and all that thing. Very similar to how you file your self-employed income lah. There's nothing too complicated about it, and you don't have to pay people to do it lah. But if you're on our retainer service, we can guide you on how to do it. Yeah, it's just a very simple form filing.
Yeah, and also there's another thing when it comes to you, when you run a business, right? As the business grows, you need to hire employees. You might even have multiple directors that's drawing director fee salary. And there's this thing known as the IRAS Auto Inclusion Scheme to help you streamline the process, right? How does this work?
Okay, so for IRAS Auto Inclusion Scheme, it's more for people who have employees. So I manage myself and one other staff as my employees. So the employer will report the income to IRAS instead of the employee own self go and report. Okay, so there's a mandatory requirement. I think the headcount number is at least 5 or 7. The employer has to go and apply for the AIS Auto Inclusion Scheme. But for my company, like we only have 2 employees, but we also go and enroll into this auto inclusion scheme because it's just easier for everyone. Like my employee don't have to report his or her own income to IRAS. So if you're working as an employee in a large corporation, then you're why you don't need to own self go and file your taxes? It's because the company has already done for you, right? Most likely the HR. So would I recommend you to do it? I would say yes, because eventually if you want to hire many people, you still have to do it anyway. And it's either your own self as a director go and report or your own self go and report as an employee. So it's no difference to you as a solo business or small business founder, business owner.
True. It's just the method in which you are reporting lah.
Yeah, but of course, if you have no employees, you don't need to go for this lah, depending on how you want to pay.
Yeah, so if you have any other questions regarding incorporation, regarding corporate tax, regarding how to utilize all these rebates, all these grants, and all these structures to your advantage as a solo business owner or small business, you can leave some of your questions in the comments for us, and we will see if we can make another video to address them later on. If you are looking to get started on this journey together with us, check out our Shift free preview, which we will leave in the description of the video.
And if you need a professional service provider, definitely look at Osome. Okay, if you want some structured compliance support. And Osome is also one of our Solo Biz partners that we worked very well before. So would highly recommend them. And make sure you check out our next video. And if you want us to do more of this compliance and business content, go and comment business plus one. Okay, we'll look forward and see you at the next video.